There's a route in southwest Arizona that's not on the new maps. It is not marked with paint. It does not pass through GPS. And if you take a wrong turn, you might not notice it. But people once walked on it. It was called John's Loop. Formally, it is closed, but someone still seems to believe that he is. Two rangers go out on a night patrol, in pairs, according to plan. Only one returns in the morning, without a backpack, without a map, and all she says is, "He said, I'll show you how we used to walk." I haven't seen him since. The car is started. There is a map inside. But there's something wrong with this map. And what would you do if in an area where there is no communication or paths, someone shows the way, which no one has checked for a long time? This is not a story about the lost. This story is about those who remembers too well where the road once was. According to the Arizona National Parks and Recreation Department's internal schedule, the southwest section of Elm Ridge Pass is required to be inspected at least every 2 months. In the spring of 2009, the section was in a low priority status, with few visitors, no complaints, and no reported incidents in the previous 9 months. However, a partial resurfacing of the markers and a visual inspection of the northern portion of the so-called second pass, an old descent line that previously connected the main route with a bypass trail across a dry creek bed, was scheduled for April. Senior Ranger John Mace, 47, a 20-year veteran of the service who knew the structure of this sector well, was assigned to conduct the planned patrol. He was paired with Sarah Powell, a 25-year-old trainee who had been in the camp for 3 months. According to her personal file, Sarah had experience working in Colorado nature reserves, but this was her first patrol in the desert zone. The decision to assign her a joint route with an experienced mentor was made the day before the trip. The route log for April 6th states, southwest contour to the second mark, without entering the main zone. Objective, to verify markings and have access around the riverbed. Start, 1700 hours. Exit from the northern parking lot. Expected return before 2300 hours. Signed, J. Mace S. Powell. Confirmed by Shift Coordinator K. Andrews. The route scheduled for the evening was not considered difficult. It was about 4 miles one way, with a gradual climb, 2 stopping points, and an old section of service line known to the staff as the second pass. This line was not listed as active in the official 2009 maps, but continued to be used in emergency situations as a shortcut around the upper discharge. It was still shown as a dotted line in some service handouts, especially in maps from the 2000s. Before leaving, Sarah received a standard kit, a map, a compass, a flashlight, a handheld radio on the group frequency, a supply of water, a thermal jacket, a basic first aid kit, and a briefing. John, as the senior, took a long-range radio and a service map with increased detail. This is not a violation, but it implies that he can adjust the route without prior notice, if it does not go beyond the permissible sector. The last voice contact with them was at 1812. John relayed to the duty officer, "We passed the second mark. Everything is in place. The weather is stable. Let's go a little further and see if the slope has shifted." After this, the connection was no longer maintained. There was no response at the base. This had happened before. The area was difficult to get a reliable signal from, especially closer to the slopes. The return was expected by midnight, but the duty officer gave permission until 0:30. When no one came into contact at 0:50, the first attempt was made to call on both channels. There was no response. The second call at 1:10 also went unanswered. No patrol was sent to the base. They decided to wait until the morning. At 6:40 the next morning, Sarah Powell returns from the north along the main route. Visually, tired, not injured, but without equipment. She's wearing only a jacket, no radio, no backpack. According to the official protocol, she was isolated and questioned in the presence of the coordinator and a medic. The first phrase she uttered was, "He said he would show me a shortcut. Then I didn't see him." In her testimony, she stated, after stopping at the second mark, John suggested checking the cut along the old line. He left the trail, saying that it's not far, and if the line holds, he'll show you how to get around it faster. He did not provide coordinates, route directions, or maps. She stayed to wait. After 2 hours, I started calling. There was no answer. When it got dark, she decided not to go looking and to stay where she was. In the morning, without waiting, I went back along the main route. The psychologist recorded signs of anxiety and a narrowed focus of attention, but not a state of shock. Sarah was able to give coherent answers, although she was confused about the details of the route. She could not pinpoint the point where John turned off the trail. She also could not explain where she left her backpack and radio. She answered all questions about John in the same way. He said, "I'll show you now," and he went down. I thought it wasn't far. 35 minutes after her return, Patrolman Tom Lowell finds the squad car parked in the southwest lot, running headlights on. On the front seat, there is a map rolled up into a roll with the following written in pen: "Second passage through the left discharge." Names in the journal: John Mace, Sarah Powell. Release date: Monday, April 6th, 1700 hours. At the base, there is not a single confirmed signal from John. The next contact will be in 5 days, but it won't be on the radio anymore. Sarah Powell's evidence was recorded twice, verbally immediately after returning to base, and again in writing later that day, after a medical examination. In both cases, she claimed that the initiative to turn off the main route came from John. According to her, after reaching the second mark at about 7 p.m., he said that a ridge line would save time, and that he had made it myself before. The official route, approved in the journal, did not include such a turn. Sarah said that she was not aware of the existence of an alternative line. However, she emphasized that John acted confidently, said that the path was the same, and that it should be passable even now. When the camp coordinator asked Sarah if this line was marked on her map. Sarah replied, "No, but he had another one. I didn't even look. He said, 'We'll check and come back if anything happens.'" The problem was that all the maps issued for April were from the latest update, without the secondary bypass, with service lines archived since the mid-2000s removed. The updated list of approved schemes did not mention a left drop or a side bypass from the second mark. So the route Sarah said John was planning to take was not included in any current operational scheme. When interviewed again, Sarah described the situation as follows. "When we stopped at the second mark, he started looking at the stone as if he was looking for something. Then he said, 'If the old line remains, we don't have to go along the upper loop.' I asked how official it was. He answered, 'Officially until 2000. Then he said, 'Wait here. I'll check the drop. I'll come back and we'll go along it. If not, back up.'" According to her, he took a radio, a map, and a light with him. He kept his backpack. She stayed to wait on the trail. The turning point itself is not marked. Sarah could not indicate the exact location, either from memory or from satellite images. Presumably, they were talking about the area between the second mark and the old subsided shaft, where an unofficial line along the left discharge, taken out of use in the mid-2000s, actually used to pass. After about 30 to 40 minutes, she said, she began calling him on the radio. There was no answer. After a while, again, the call sign was silent. She waited until darkness fell. Communication was not resumed. With limited visibility, no leader, no coordinates, and no physical certainty of direction, she remained where she was. At night, according to her, she did not move anywhere. She took a stationary position under a canopy near the slope, covered herself with a jacket. She turned on the radio at intervals. At dawn, she decided not to continue the search, but to go out onto the main trail, using a compass as a guide. She reached the base at 6:40 in the morning, without a backpack and without a personal radio. She explained, "I took off my backpack when I sat down to wait. Then I couldn't find it when it got light. Maybe it had moved during the night. I didn't look for long. I decided to go light. I had to go out anyway." The group coordinator recorded, "Stable condition, motor activity is not impaired. Response logic is preserved. Increased anxiety, but without signs of disorientation. The medic confirmed the absence of injuries, signs of dehydration and hypothermia. The probable duration of her stay outside the base is about 12 hours. Immediately after the report of her return, the first detour was organized. The perimeter was combed within a radius of 1.5 miles from the second mark. For the first day, 0 signals, 0 visual confirmations, 0 deviations from the route. No debris, no fabric, no signs of a fire or rest. In the area of the supposed detour, the soil is loose, but not dusty. No traces of displacement. No falls were found. On the second day, closer to lunch, the patrol finds a service SUV left running on the edge of the site. Inside is a folded map with a handwritten note. Second passage, through the left discharge. Headlights on. machine not in parking lot. Checking the archive shows that the card is not from the current set. This is a test release with an archived technical routing layer, previously used for educational purposes and decommissioned in 2006. The suspicion grows. If John used this particular card, it means he was deliberately operating with data that should not have been used in his work. But then the question arises, where did he get it? And if the route was familiar to him, why didn't he return? After 2 days, not a single trace indicates his direction. And the point where he went, according to all data, leads nowhere. At 9 o'clock in the morning of April 7th, 2009, Patrol Ranger Tom Lowell left for the area of the southwest exit to the Elm Creek line on orders from the shift coordinator. The task was to check the possible parking point of the crew of John Mace and Sarah Powell. This point was not officially included in the patrol route, but was periodically used as a technical start when bypassing the unstable zone of the second pass. Arriving at 9:42 a.m., Lowell found a Ford Bronco utility vehicle, registration number 398, parked. According to Lowell, the interior appeared undamaged. On the driver's seat was a map rolled up with a note written in blue ballpoint pen. Second passage through the left discharge. Next to it is a plastic route marker, the same kind used by the Forest Service for temporary markings. On the back are embossed old initials, FP6, a coding format not used since 2005. This caused the first official discrepancy. No such tags with this index were listed as part of the current routes. In the trunk of the car were 2 sets of thermal jackets, a supply of water, a first aid kit, a folding rope, a fuel canister, a standard repair kit, and an empty plastic folder. There was no documentation for the route. There was no telephone. No radios were found during the inspection of the car either. The investigation team, which arrived at 11:30, conducted a preliminary examination. No traces of struggle, vandalism, or unauthorized entry were found. Fingerprints on the steering wheel, door, map belong to John Mace. On the floor, there is a trace of dry earth pressed in by the sole of a service boot. On the rug, there is a lump of dry moss, probably transferred from a shoe. The engine was turned off at 11:46. During this time, according to the technician's calculations, it had been running for at least 10 hours. This was confirmed by the fuel level and engine temperature. Thus, the car was abandoned on the night of the 6th to the 7th of April, approximately between 22 and midnight, and remained running until the patrol arrived. The fact that the car was left running and with the headlights on gave rise to a separate entry in the report. Such behavior is not typical for officers familiar with on-site procedures. If there is no signal on the radio, the car should be turned off. If the officer leaves the car in an emergency, the headlights remain off. The map also attracted attention. When it was submitted for analysis, it turned out this is not a map of the current service kit. The paper is thicker, the font is the same format. does not correspond to the circulation after the year 2000. In the lower corner, the erased inscription, Internal Use. Routing layer includes a closed line along the left fault. The map is identified as one of the intermediate editions of Forest Service cartography, dating from 2004 to 2006. It is listed in the database as for test verification in archival conditions, is not to be used in field surveys, and should have been destroyed or returned to the archive. Cartographic archive specialists confirmed that since the beginning of 2008, such maps have not been issued to any active employee of the service. However, earlier they could have been in the possession of senior rangers who were engaged in relaying lines or participating in the reconstruction of routes. The investigation recorded that John Mace did have access to such materials in the early 2000s. He was involved in updating the maps for the southwestern sector and could have had a personal copy of the map unofficially kept for himself. There is no official answer to the question of why he took this particular card, bypassing it. But a combination of factors: personal signature, landmark second pass, presence of the old tag, the engine is on, unfinished route registration, presumably indicates that he was preparing to use a line long closed to official passage. The only question that remained was, why did he leave the car running? Was this an emergency, signal, error, or did he not plan to leave for long? The search party expanded the perimeter. The dump site was examined for signs of downward movement. On the first day, there were no results, but on the evening of the second day, a trace was discovered on the scree, visually corresponding to a single movement downwards, along a route that is not marked in any current map. That's where John Mace headed, voluntarily. One, no signal, and along a line that no one else used. On the third day, after the departure of the group of rangers, John Mace and Sarah Powell, the operational headquarters in the camp of the southern sector, began to verify the map data. The reason was the discovery of a map in the service SUV, a copy that was not listed in the current official set. Formally, each ranger is obliged to use a map corresponding to the approved circulation of the current season, where all the archive lines are removed or marked as inactive. The map found in the car's interior was not such. Initial analysis showed the paper is thicker than standard. The color coding of the landmarks is the same as before. At the bottom of the sheet are illegible traces of an old stamp. Under ultraviolet light, the inscription is visible. Preliminary edition, Sporty, line FP6, Southwest Technical Sector. The routing layer contained a dotted line from the second marker to the lower fault, crossing the dry riverbed, then exiting to an old monitoring station that had not been manned since 2005. The configuration of the line resembled a bypass route that had been taken out of active use in the mid-2000s. The internal coding of the map corresponded to test materials printed between 2003 and 2006. The document was seized and transferred to the Archives Department of the Central Administration. From there, confirmation came. The map belonged to a series distributed in limited quantities among senior rangers involved in the revision of the schemes. These maps were intended for internal verification, were not subject to long-term storage, and were to be seized or destroyed after the final scheme was approved. John Mace's service file shows that he was indeed part of the route review team in 2004 and 2005. He was then part of the visiting committee to reorganize the southwestern sector, so he would have had access to the trial materials. And it is likely that he retained one of the copies. These maps are not officially approved for field use. They are not synchronized with current safety protocols and do not take into account updated data on soil instability, landslides, shifts, and deactivated areas. On the map found in the car, the old route was marked by hand. Line FP6, running along the southern fault, is circled in blue marker. It is written next to it. Check the passage below. If it holds, check the stream's landmarks. This raised new questions. When exactly did he decide to check this line? Did he discuss this with any of his colleagues? Did he plan to use the standard route at all? Sarah Powell's interrogation provided only a partial picture. She stressed that she had no access to the map and that all her actions were coordinated with John. She was unaware that the route they took did not exist on the official map. The camp's operational log records. The employee showed no signs of independent deviation from the route. All instructions came from the senior ranger. At the time of entering the irrelevant line, she did not realize that the route was not approved. No misleading marks were found in the field. However, in the area that John was supposedly going to pass, traces of old markings were indeed preserved. On one of the rocks, searchers found a metal pin with paint residue matching the color of the markings used before 2000. This strengthened the version that part of the physical structure of the route had been preserved and could mislead even an experienced employee. Or, on the contrary, it could have been used intentionally. One of the problems was that no one except John Mace himself could know the exact line of the old route. Internal documentation from that line was not preserved. It was considered closed, and the route was not digitized. That is, even if he went by old memory, all navigation took place at the level of personal experience and visual orientation. What alarmed the service even more, the map found in the car was partially damaged, as if it had been wet and then dried out again. The edges had uneven stains. One of the specialists suggested that it could have been used on a previous outing, but John's last recorded outing to this area was more than 3 years ago. There were no records of plans to bypass the old line. Not in the personal log, not in the official weekly plans. Everything indicated that the route was initiated informally, outside the protocol, and possibly alone. At this stage, A new designation appeared in the case: unauthorized use of an archived route map. The violation is technical, but the consequences are uncertain. Because if John Mace was indeed following the old line, then he went where no one else goes, and where no one can say what is left there. On the morning of April 8th, the third day after John Mace and Sarah Powell left, the search area was officially expanded to the southern section. The basis for this was the determination of a possible direction in which Mace could have gone, based on a map found in the car and information about an old technical detour along the FP6 line. The route, although taken from current maps, partially coincided with the natural relief and, according to the group coordinator, could mislead even an experienced ranger if he relied on memory and previous landmarks. By 11 o'clock, search parties from the south had ascended to the area of the old fault, known from archival maps as Sector 7 Alpha, an area officially closed to patrols since 2005. The ban was based on geologists' data on the risk of localized collapses, unstable ground, and partial destruction of the stairways once used for ascents. The markings on the ground had been dismantled, and the maps indicated the area as impassable. However, at 12:42, the 3 Bravo team made their first visual contact with a trace. It was a shallow cut in the rock edge of the fault, about 5 inches wide. The nature of the damage indicated a soft foot sliding down the edge of the rock ledge. Direction: down. The rocks below the ledge were partially crumbled, but not completely destroyed. Below began a sloping descent along layered sandstone, leading to a narrow shelf. Descending along the drop line at 1305, the patrol discovered a lone jacket neatly folded and placed on the flat surface of a rocky ledge. The jacket is a standard issue, dark green, with U.S. Forest Service markings. The inside tag has the name J. Mays. The fabric is clean, undamaged, and not wet. On the outside of the jacket is a plastic tag similar to those used for trail markings. On the back are the initials FP6 and a handwritten inscription. Keep to the left, go around the stream. 60 feet below, at the base of the drop, a candy bar wrapper, the same type that was standard ranger rations in 2009, was found in a crevice between boulders. It was untouched and folded, indicating that the debris may have been intentional rather than accidental. A survey of the surrounding area revealed there are no traces of the fall. Slippage is minimal. No traces of dragging found. Prints are blurred, but present on 2 sections of the shelf. At the edge of the rock massif, 20 feet from the jacket, a depressed footprint was visually recorded. Direction: south, towards the supposed old passage. The size of the footprint matched the data on John Mace's equipment. The group commander noted in the journal, apparently, the man descended the discharge consciously, didn't break, didn't fall, stopped, partially undressed, marked the direction, and left. Based on the evidence found, the following decision was made. Expand the search along the supposed line of the old passage. Activate parallel bypass along the streamline. Involve a senior specialist in archival schemes to verify the FP6 map. Already in the evening at 17:23, another patrol moving along the stream noticed a single trace on the damp soil. It was a chain of 3 clear depressions leading downwards. Below is a cliff. It is impossible to descend without insurance. But on the opposite side of the canyon, the movement of an object was recorded from the air. Unidentified, resembling a human figure moving slowly along the edge. Contact could not be established before darkness fell, but the coordinates were recorded, and it is to that zone that the main group will be sent the next day. At the base, the marks were being checked at that time. This point was not included as a connected route in any official map. It lay between the lines, in a blind zone formed by old relief structures that had already been excluded from the new versions of the maps. In the archives, they found a mention. Passage through the left ridge is not recommended, but possible via the internal mark if the marking holds. The entry was dated Spring 2003. The author's name is not specified, but the handwriting on the fragment visually matches that on the tag found on the jacket. On the third day, it became clear that John Mace had not simply deviated. He was moving along the line he had helped to lay 15 years earlier, but no one could say why he returned there now. And what exactly did he hope to find there? On April 9th at 7:38 a.m., an aerial surveillance team recorded the movement of a single object in the area of the intersection of an old drainage channel and a rock corridor designated in the archival maps as Sector 510 Alpha. This was an area not included in the current patrol routes and not designated in any of the current topographic maps since 2005. The relief is unstable. The soil is loose with partial subsidence covered with patches of bushes and rock fragments. According to the observer, the figure moved slowly and unevenly, visually determined from the air. A man in a service jacket without a hat, empty-handed, no backpack. The man does not give signals, does not react to the helicopter's flight, does not look up. Moves along the stream, looping, as if without a clear direction. 47 minutes later, the ground team reaches the visual contact point. At 9:05, the subject is spotted. John Mace, a service ranger, confirmed by appearance and the tag on the inside of his jacket. He stands leaning against a rock. He looks exhausted, pale. His face is wind-blown. On his feet are standard boots. The laces are unfastened. The soles are dirty with lime dust. The shirt under the jacket is wet with sweat. Eyes are open. Reaction to approach is minimal. When asked about his condition, he answers in monosyllables, "Fine." When asked where the backpack is, "Don't know." When asked where he was, I was walking along the line. I knew her. The rescue team assesses his condition as stable, but with signs of mental disorientation. He does not resist, but does not ask questions, allows himself to be examined, answers slowly, without expressing emotions. There are minor abrasions on the skin, but no serious injuries. Body temperature is low, pulse is rapid, blood pressure is low. There is no water with him, food is absent. When asked if he ate anything, he answers, "1 bar, then I couldn't find where else." He agrees to evacuation. Within 15 minutes, he is delivered to the landing point, then transported to the camp. The total time spent out of contact was 3 days, found 8.5 miles south of where Sarah Powell last saw him. Upon return, doctors confirm mild dehydration, muscle fatigue, signs of cognitive impairment, disorientation, confused chronology, inconsistent answers, no injuries or concussions. The psychiatrist recommends isolation for 48 hours under observation. In the first interrogation report, John reports, "I knew how to go. There was a line. We used to go down it. There's an edge. I thought I'd get there." He doesn't remember where he lost his backpack. He can't say how many days he was on the road. He says he saw water, but doesn't know if he drank it. Asks, "And Sarah, is she back? Is everything okay?" When asked to point out on the map which route he took, he first points to an empty area outside the current routes, and then says, "Not like that. Below, the old way, where FP6 is." When asked where he got the map, he replies, "I made a copy myself. I had one before. I still have it." It's not in his pockets. It's not in his backpack either. None of the things found on him indicate the presence of an additional navigation source. The doctor who examined John upon his return noted in his report, "He's not shocked. He's not panicked. He's just kind of disconnected from the logic of the moment. He's acting like someone who's done everything right, but now doesn't understand why he's in the wrong place." These words become the main version of further interrogations. By all indications, John Mace acted purposefully. He did not just survive. He went out along a line that he remembered, but which no longer exists as a route. The camp is checking. There were no signals from the radio. Coordinates? No. None of the staff knew about John's plans to go through the archive line. No one confirms the existence of a current physical passage through the creek where it was found. All that pointed to his actions was an old map found in the car, single trace at the discharge, and a man who came out on his own. But he can't explain where exactly it comes from. After John Mace's condition was stabilized, he was placed in the camp's isolation unit for 48 hours. Doctors confirmed that there were no clinical signs of concussion or traumatic brain injury. Speech and motor functions were preserved. Reactions were slow, but the logic of his answers was orderly. However, during the interviews, the main thing was revealed. His route did not coincide with any real line recorded in the current or archived diagrams. The first protocol of the survey was drawn up on the evening of April 10th. It recorded, "I walked along the old line from the second mark down. There was always a shelf there. We put a mark there by the tree, then along the edge where the drop is. If it holds, you can go around, I knew. When asked to point to a point on a map, he chose an area between two routes that was not marked on any map. When shown a map that had a note on it saying, "Second pass, through left drop," he said, "Yes, that's it. Only this one is old. They don't draw like that anymore." When experts tried to reconstruct the supposed path according to his words, a discrepancy arose. Shelves, like he describes, no longer exist. The landmarks he indicated have not survived. The tree he was talking about was blown down in a landslide in 2004. However, he insisted that he had learned everything. According to him, everything matched up until the very discharge. And after that, the line seemed to break off, but before it ran along the riverbed. There used to be, you walk and see. Here is a bush with 3 trunks, then a gray rock, then a sunken turn. I remember that. This is not on the new ones. This is from the ones we verified. By we, he meant the route relaying committee he participated in the early 2000s. However, in archival documents, this route is recorded as conditionally existing. That is, not marked and not confirmed by field measurements. The service psychologist who interviewed John recorded, "The overall emotional background is even. He is not in panic or denial. His speech is that of a man who is sure of his own rightness. But the points he refers to are either lost or have never been recognized as official. It is as if he is navigating by a map that he keeps in his head, but which no one else can verify." During the follow-up interview, John described in detail the structure of the trail he said he had followed. From the second mark, down the left reset, edge with old ledge, shelf under the stone wall, triple bush with a mark. The next direction is along the stream. Exit to the old evacuation line. The problem was that the said evacuation line had been dismantled back in 2005, and traces of all the landmarks he had referred to were not in the said zone. Moreover, the point where he had been found had never been the site of a route, not even in experimental schemes. It was a relief depression that could only be reached by moving along the natural landscape, without a path, without directions. To the additional question, why didn't you go back when you realized that you didn't recognize the area? He replied, "Because I recognized everything. It was just like it was out of place, like it was all right, but twisted." Service report on the results of the conversation with the coordinator's note. The ranger acted consciously, without external influence, with a logic based on memories that did not coincide with current cartography. His path was not random. He did not get lost. He walked because he believed in the existence of the route. The psychologist clarified that John's speech does not contain elements of fiction or fantasy thinking. His memories are linear, calm, without emotional outbursts. But the events he describes either happened many years ago or were not recorded in documents at all. An additional paradox arose when John asked for paper and began to draw the route by hand. The line he drew resembled the old map, but it passed through areas that had been physically destroyed more than a decade earlier. He pointed out, "There was a passage here, then an edge. Here are bushes, then a turn and down the line. You could always go there." When he was shown a photo of this zone in its current state, with landslides, collapses, and ruptures, he looked silently. Then he said, "No, it was different there before." The security service concluded that John Mace was probably moving based on visual memory, relying on an idea of a route that no longer exists. But that was the main question. He remembers the path, just not the one that remained on the ground. During an external inspection of John Mace's clothing, conducted the same day after his discovery, security personnel recorded the presence of a small field notebook in the inside pocket of his jacket. The notebook was a standard issue, waterproof, soft cover, with a plastic spring about 20 pages thick. There were no attachments, no maps, route sheets, or individual notes were found in the pockets. Most of the pages of the notebook were blank or badly faded. Several sheets near the middle had been carefully torn out. On the fourth page from the end was a single clear entry written in pencil, in block letters, without a signature or date. "If you can't see below, return through the channel it holds." The line is single, written exactly in the center. Below is a trace of an erased inscription. The paper is not damaged. When enlarged, it is visible that on the back of the page is a trace of an earlier entry, possibly deleted. There was no accompanying text. The next page is blank. The phrase sent for analysis had no unique markers, but in terms of pressure, style, and shape of the letters, the handwriting visually matches previous handwriting samples of John Mace. The handwriting expert noted in his conclusion, "The entry was made with a confident hand, in one pass, without corrections. The writing style is balanced. The pressure on the pencil is moderate. The style is without signs of stress. The person who left the entry did so without haste and consciously." John was shown the notebook and the text. He confirmed that it was his. When asked when he had made the entry, he replied, "I don't remember. Probably when we went out to drop off. We always left ourselves such marks if the trail had no flags." When asked to whom the recording was addressed, he said, "For yourself, or for your partner. There used to be a mark there. If visibility is poor, it's better to return not along the edge, but across the stream. It's an old practice." However, such formulations are not recorded in the official protocols. No instruction across the riverbed was found in official manuals or field memos. The only mention of such an evacuation method was found in an archival report from the spring of 2003, where the following phrase was recorded during training: "If there is no visual contact, it is permissible to return along the streamline, provided that the soil is stable." This scheme has since been removed from the protocols. The question remained, why did John make this entry now, 15 years after the site was deemed irrelevant? The notebook was kept in a pocket, not wet, not damaged. This indicates that the person carried it carefully and perhaps consulted it along the way. However, There was not a single meaningful fragment in it. Only short strokes similar to pencil tests, and one illegible figure resembling the outline of a root. A line with a bend and 3 dots under it. Whether this was an attempt to reconstruct the diagram from memory is unclear. When asked about these dots, John shrugged. Maybe these are landmarks, where there was a bush and a bend I sometimes drew for myself to remember. He had already mentioned the inflection point earlier, but such an object was not recorded either in the current area or in the archive tracing. In satellite images of recent years, in the specified area, there is an empty slope with a gap, partially overgrown with bushes. Important point, the notebook was not registered in the last inventory of equipment. It was not listed in the issue or in the description of the kit that John received before going out. That is, with a high probability, the notebook was personal, not official, and could have been used by him long before this round. One of the rangers on duty who had worked with him previously on an anonymous basis reported, John always had his own schemes. He remembered a lot, made notes, especially on old points. He said, "If everything is closed, at least I will remember where everything was." It was not a violation, it was just his way of thinking. Old style. So, the discovery of the notebook added only one more tension to the picture. He didn't get lost by accident, didn't get lost due to ignorance. He followed the route he believed in, even if this route existed only in his memory and on one line in pencil, no date, no mark, but with precise logic. Based on this fragment, the service psychologist makes a brief conclusion. For him, this path was real, and it was he who was the support when everything else no longer mattered. 7 days after setting out on the trail, Ranger John Mace returned to the inpatient unit at the South Camp under medical and psychological observation. He's not broken. He's not delirious. He's not post-traumatic. He's just cut off from current logic. All medical indicators were within the norm. Body temperature is low, but not critical. Dehydration, mild. Blood pressure, stabilized after 6 hours. Brain activity, no abnormalities. Physical endurance, preserved. Reactions to commands and touches, without delay. That is, he did not fall. He did not wander around. He did not lose consciousness. He walked. No external injuries, no chaos in actions, no attempts to attract attention. And this means only one thing. He left consciously. The investigation committee, which completed its internal review 9 days after the incident, found no direct violations in Sarah Powell's actions. Her actions were deemed rational given the lack of communication and the loss of her partner. She remained on duty, but was temporarily suspended from patrol. Her final sentence in the report: "I didn't know where he was going. He seemed calm. He didn't do anything strange. He just said, 'Wait here,' and he went." When asked whether this was a route based on memory or a spontaneous decision, the investigation gave an intermediate answer. John Mace moved according to a logic known only to him. He knew the area. He was involved in developing routes in the 2000s. He kept a map that had long since been written off. He wrote down a phrase in his notebook that was nowhere to be found. He has reached a point from which there is no direct return. And he came out himself. When asked in the final interrogation what happened, he replied, "I just decided to go through. There was always a way around. I didn't think it would be a problem." When asked for clarification, "Why didn't you tell me the route to the base?" he said, "I didn't think it was important. Everything is clear there." For him, it's clear. For the rest, this line no longer exists. After an internal review, the map found in the car was officially written off as unauthorized material. The FP6 line designations were finally excluded from all archival substrates. The route was declared non-existent. Passage along it is prohibited. Data about it is not included in general databases. The official conclusion reads, "The route the employee traveled was not listed in the current backup or archive schemes. This route can only be used by visual memory or by data not available to other system participants." The service psychologist gave a final assessment. The man acted without panic, but outside the system coordinates. He did not try to leave. He did not try to hide. He simply moved to where logic remained for him, even if it did not coincide with the maps. This is what was written in the closed application. He wasn't lost. He was gone, along a route only he remembered. Formally, the case is closed. John Mace is alive, recovered, temporarily transferred to administrative work. But on his report on the tour, which was never submitted on time, there remained one line written by hand, unsigned, no date, in gray pen at the bottom. "If it holds, I'll show you how we used to walk." So that's the story. These were all the official pieces of evidence listed in the case. If you've ever experienced something similar, on a hike, on a trail, out in the woods, share it in the comments. Maybe not with you, but with someone you knew. Sometimes small details can open up something bigger. And if this story stuck with you, save the video. Add it to a playlist. Come back to it later. Sometimes the full picture only makes sense the second or third time. And if you feel like someone's hiding something here, say it. Cases like this often stay alive only because someone refuses to forget.